1920 and card 21. The only card that's missing from there, by the way, and I don't have one, is the Fool. But he's you and I. And he doesn't have a number. The Fool is on the journey. These guys are in a stationary position for a very specific reason. Okay. The kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of the good God, is undifferentiated consciousness. I want you to think about those words for a minute. Undifferentiated consciousness. The idea that there's only oneness. There's no differentiation. There may be an us, because in Genesis there's a reference to an us, but in the us there's undifferentiation. Okay? And of course, Adam and Eve are in the Garden of Eden, and they partake of the fruit of the tree of which tree? Knowledge of good and evil. And all of a sudden, they introduce the concept of differentiation. And so they now have a belief that they're different to God. How do we know that? All of you, you've just been to church? Because they're hiding. God's going through Adam and Eve, where are you guys? And they're hiding. Because they know now that they're different. And then he goes, why are you hiding? Because we're naked. And he says, well, who told you you're naked? So all of a sudden, Adam and Eve have created the belief that they're different. Differentiation. And what's interesting is that differentiation is who they are physically, mentally, so in other words, in terms of how they think, who they are emotionally. They now have fear and will. In other words, they're disobeying God. They're now exerting personal will. So now they've created a sense of them being different to God. And it's manifested in terms of a physical, mental, emotional and spiritual representation that is symbolised by the bull who represents the physical, the angel who represents mental, the lion who represents spiritual, and the eagle that represents emotional. So now what we have is this place where, of course, what happens is God says, well, guys, you can't stay here. You've become one of us. That's an interesting statement. God says, you've become one of us to know good and evil. So why couldn't they stay? Anyone want to hazard a guess as to why they couldn't stay? Because God knew about good and evil, so if it was all right for God...
God's just a symbol, isn't it?
Well, it is. Yeah, we're talking about a consciousness. We're just talking about a vibration here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nothing in the world.
But I'm using a simple language to convey the concept. But yes, you're right.
The world doesn't stand still or stay still. There's continuous movement.
But they're still in the presence of God.
Once the what Adam and Eve symbolise, once those characters have achieved a particular status, they must move on.
Oh, they'd lost the differentiation, the undifferentiation, that they weren't oneness anymore.
Mm-hmm. They had become fearful. The difference between God and Adam and Eve was they both had the same knowledge, but God was all about love. Adam and Eve were driven by fear. And God says, I'm really concerned that you're going to partake of the fruit of the tree of life, of everlasting life. with the consciousness of fear. You can't stay here until you work that out. So you've got to leave the garden and sort your shit out and come back with love consciousness. So, Adam and Eve leave the garden. They come into the spirit world at first. And God says something really interesting as they leave. What does he do at the east?